Oh, hello, everybody. This is Claudio Salo here. It's that day of the week, that time of the day when we get together here for the virtual brown bag. As usual, we are going to go through a quick intro here, give folks some time to join in, as well as explain what this thing is all about for those of us who have never been here. So what these meetings are all about, this is a place where we get together every week and we share tips and tricks related to tools, shortcuts, or articles, books, patterns, whatever it is related to software development that we find useful and feel like other people could benefit from those tips. We share experiences, something that we've been doing and we've learned the hard way, and again, we feel like somebody else could benefit from it. It's always fair game here. We also share frustrations or difficulties. Maybe you're trying to do something and you're having a heck of a hard time trying to figure out why the dang thing doesn't work. Well, bring it up here. Maybe somebody else has gone through the same problems before. If not, we can always just do a live, troubleshooting session here. Sometimes we find you the answer. Sometimes we point you out in the right direction. It's all about having a conversation here. So the idea is not to have your typical conference or user group talk. The idea here is, to have somebody proposing a topic or start, talking about whatever, and people just, chime in and start having a conversation. That's why it keeps it, refreshing and interesting. We do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time here on Live Meeting. It's free, open for everybody. Anybody who would like to share or learn or doing both is always better. The more people sharing, the more variety we can achieve here. This is a partial list of things we've covered so far. We've been all over the place, and I guess eventually I should update a little more this list because we've been covering a lot more ground, and but it's just to give people an idea of the topics we've been through here. We have an official virtualbrownbag.com website that you can share the link with people, help us promote the site, and again, help over time increase the number of people that we have here doing the sharing and the learning thingy. Over there, you can also find the wiki where we keep the notes and links and other things that we share here during the meetings. We record all of these meetings, so if you've missed one, you can watch it later. Or if you would like to review some of the things that we've discussed during the meeting, you can always watch it later. In that website, you can also suggest topics for us. It can either be a topic that you would like to talk about or that you would like to have somebody else talk about. That's all fair game. How does it work? Well, it works with somebody starting the meeting like I'm doing right now. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's George, sometimes it's JB. Whichever one of us is available at the day, we'll start the meeting, explain everything like I'm doing right now. And then from there on, people will just start taking turns as to, who's like leading the conversation or starting the conversation, and we go from there. We can also promote you to a presenter so that you can share your screen with the other attendees. If you have questions, you can use the live meeting Q&A feature to type out your questions, or you can also use that for comments, links, suggestions, whatever you would like to post there. We've also been using this tinyurl.com/vbb-chat. It's a chat room that we can use to have like parallel conversations or side conversations, if you will. It's something we started trying out like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we just that's the way the VBB goes. We just try different things. Whatever works out, we stick with it. Whatever doesn't work, we just move on to the next thing. If you're going to be presenting something, we can promote you to a presenter through live meeting. That way you're going to get some extra features to be able to share your screen or just an area of your screen or a given program on your computer. If you've never done it, don't worry. We can just walk you through the process. It's very simple. Just push a few buttons and then we can see your screen, right? So be very careful with what you share. And if afterwards you have ideas, questions, suggestions as to how we can, improve the experiences for everybody here, just let us know. Send us an email, hit us on Twitter, whatever. You can find us online, that's for sure. Let's see, there's a question here from Rick. Is there a new location where the records are being stored? The last one from the site was from April. Oh, I will look into that. It should be in the same spot. Let me check. Whatever happened there. I know that we've had a problem with the automated process that we have that downloads the video from live meeting and then it renders to a different format, a more universal format, and it pushes it up to Vidler, I believe. And, well, yeah, it's not showing up here. Well, thanks for pointing that out, Rick. I will check with Jared, who's our guy who's been helping out with processing these videos. And I remember he had, a couple of weeks ago, he had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 meetings to render. He had gone through them. Maybe we're back to catching up with that. So I have to check out and see what's going on. Let me just make a note of that so I won't forget. Let's see. Check with Jared about videos. All right. Yeah, we also need to find a better way to do this because we had the automated process going through, I think, some Amazon stuff that Jared was using, but apparently it's whatever we had is not being reliable. So we need to look into something that we can use everywhere. All right, so let's see, a couple of things that I have here to share. One is early on this week, I just blogged about how I started blogging for Ruby source. And my first blog was this, just essentially introducing this series, the switching to Ruby from .NET, because they were looking for writers in several aspects of Ruby, one of them being switching to Ruby from whatever other environment. And since I was blogging to my personal blog, my experience is exactly about that. So I said, well, might as well start writing, just more formally. So I just introduced the series this week. Who's the series for, what we're going to be covering there, the tone of the things, and, how I got there kind of thing. Just introducing myself to the crowd because in the .NET world, people, several people know me, but in the Ruby world, of course, nobody knows me. So I said, oh, I better introduce myself, say, what I'm here for. And I will be doing that every other week, right? I will be posting there, following these series, but I will continue posting to my personal blog, and where the ideas on my personal blog is just a dump of ideas that I push in there, and then here in Ruby source, I will just be polishing the ideas, and of course there's like an editor that's going to be editing my stuff to make sure that, I have all the dots on the right spot kind of thing. But that's one thing for me, it's very exciting. Like I was mentioning to some people, it's like, if you ask me today if I'm ready to write this entire series, say that I had to deliver it all at once, well, hell no, right? I'm still very new to this. I'm still learning a crap load of stuff. But the fact that I'm committing to do something like this, it's going to push me over the edge, right? So it's just for me a way to, it's a motivation, right? I have to be motivated into doing something. So if I'm committed to writing something to help other people learn, well, I better learn it myself well to a point where I can explain some of this to other people, right? So it's just a way that I found several years ago to push myself over the edge and make sure that I keep moving forward. I don't just, stagnate and say, oh, I know enough to do this one project and it's all good. No, right? I have to keep pushing myself. Otherwise, I'm like everybody. I'm going to get comfortable. It's like, whatever, right? Don't worry.
Hello? Can anyone hear me? Did I drop it? Hello? Can't hear any audio?
I can hear you, but I can't hear Claudia.
Oh, good. Okay. So it's not just me. All right, let me message him. Sorry, Claudio. Oh, big gray spot. Someone beat me to it. Okay, Claudio, rejoin. So, how's everyone doing? What Claudio's doing all this. No. Alright, Claudio's going to need to reconnect. And, I guess while he's doing that, I guess I can share some stuff. Shut down my things. Hopefully he'll make me presenter and then I can go ahead and show some stuff. Okay, so can you guys hear me right now? Hello?
I can hear you, yes.
Anyone? Okay, you can see me, you can hear me, you can see my screen, hopefully.
I see you.
Okay, let me shut down things I'm working on. Okay. Actually, I'm going to need Firefox open. Well, so, people have been, I remember a while ago, people asked me for PowerShell tips and tricks, and just kind of to do a series on it, which I need to concentrate on. Actually, did you just do it? Oh, I got a Q&A questions. That's probably for Claudio. Yeah, can't hear you. But I do have one that I've kind of started doing lately that I just kind of want to tell people about. So I created in my profile a function, a function called setup workspace, which basically I noticed that every time I reboot my virtual machine, I go ahead and do the same things over and over and over again to get into my work mode. So basically, I always change to the current directory for the current project that I'm working on. I open a VSD file that we use for what our designers use, so I can see what they're doing. I open a link pad so I can go ahead and look into the database. I open up the solution and I start my server, and then usually I hit up Mercurial to see a list of the recent changes. Great, so I just created a function called setup workspace, which is just going to do all of that for me. So I boot up my computer and then I just type in, I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to start popping up all our designer documents and everything. But basically, I just type in setup dash and hit tab, setup workspace, and I hit it, and that will, it takes about 10-15 seconds, but it opens all the applications for me, and I'm in work mode. It's really, really, really handy, and I highly recommend it. Another thing that you can see kind of that I do here, I set up a PS drive, a PowerShell drive, called work : that just points me to the directory which for the current project I'm working on. So I can do something like this, and it's basically know, this is the root of the project that I'm working on. It's a nice way to kind of get started with it. And, you know, again, to switch into and out of kind of work mode. Any questions on this stuff, by the way? If anyone has it. Okay. I mean, so, again, this is something I really recommend for everyone to do. I've said before, I think I've told everyone before that I really, really recommend, where is it? Taking PowerShell and dragging it to your startup folder. So if you're on Windows 7, I don't know where it is at XP, but somewhere, you have this folder called Startup in your menu. Basically, everything in that folder is going to start up by default. And I don't know where. Oh, there it is. I've got a console too in there, which runs my PowerShell. So I put it right in there. So when I start up my computer, the window is right up and ready to go. So that's one little tip that I want to share with you. Let's see. Is Claudio rejoined yet? Claudio, you doing well there?
Yep, I'm just sitting back here and watching, man. Thanks for taking over.
Okay.
I don't know what happened here.
Okay, so just switching gears to my favorite topic of JavaScript for a second. Oh, that's not it. I just want to show something that I've been kind of realizing lately. I've been really, really in love with JavaScript loose typing lately, and basically because it allows you to do things really concise, and to the point where there's almost no reason to ever use an if statement in JavaScript now. And let me show you what I mean. And I've kind of hinted at this a little bit before, but so if you use jQuery, you know that there's several different syntaxes for invoking a lot of their methods. For example, when you call the Ajax method, you could do something like this. Say, okay, well, call me some Ajax, and my URL here. That's going to be the URL that you're going to hit, and then you're going to pass in some data, and then you're going to pass in a callback function for what happens when success is for results return, right? So that way, console.log results. So that's one of the syntaxes for the Ajax method, and it actually has a bunch. But Ajax has like a bunch of parameters. And actually, let's pull this up right now. I'll show it to you. It actually has, I don't know, like 50 different parameters. So what I want to show you is. Okay. So if you look in here, it's actually got like tons and tons of different options. So what they have another syntax that you can use, which makes a little more sense when using an option like a method like this, and that's something like this: dot Ajax, and then you pass in a single object with keys such as my URL here, data, my ID 1, success. The callback for success is function results console.log results. So everyone's now going, what? We all know this. That's pretty obvious. Why are guys still hear me because I just knocked out my audio?
Yeah, I can hear you.
1 second. Hold on. There we go. You can hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, I did this. I pulled out my audio jack. So why am I even talking about this? We all know this. Well, I want to show you how this is implemented, and that will cast light on what I'm saying about if statements. And actually, I'm not exactly sure how, like, the exact pattern that they used to implement it, but I know the one that I use, and I've seen something similar to it in the jQuery code base. So I assume that in the Ajax case, they do something similar to it. So, say I want to create a function that follows a similar pattern. So here's one I created recently, and it's to pop up a confirmation dialog, right? So we all know we can do something like this. And it'll say, give you a little dialog, which, you know, in the most recent version of Firefox, it looks not that bad. But this is like akin to using that old alert thing, which we all know never to ever use, right? Because it's just ugly. It's stupid. So right now what we have is jQuery UI, which just really quickly, let me actually see if we have it loaded up here. I don't have it on here. Let me hit a website which has it. Documentation. They probably have it on here. If not, well, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't want to really talk about that. But anyway, I would implement a confirmation dialog with something like this. This is a little bit of code here. So I would say create a div, set the text to and then I would create dialog, and dialog takes in something like this. So for yes function, yes, console.log, they pressed no. Okay. Anyway, this is not even part of it. This is me just showing how that's just how you would create a confirmation dialog. There's some redundancy there if you're putting this on every single page, namely the fact that you're doing it by creating a div, and then the buttons are always yes and no. So I'd like to go ahead and abstract that, and the syntax that I would like to use to start with is to say confirm, and be able to say something like press yes please, and then pass in a callback for yes and a callback for no. So let's do that. So to implement this is easy enough. I would just do something like this. Text, yes, no. And then in here, we would do this, and just kind of pull out those parameters. Right. Okay. Now, what if? So now I could, having declared that, I could go ahead and use it like so. Okay. Now, what if I want to get the same type of jQuery-like syntax, where I would say something like this. Press yes, please. On yes, do that. no do that. Interestingly enough, it does not require a huge change. Here's how you would do it. Take that same exact function. Actually, let's just go ahead and do it up here. You take the same exact function. I'm going to change this to a parameter called text or options. And now I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say, well, in the case of yes is easier. If the yes parameter exists, we're going to take it. If the yes parameter does not exist, we're going to check text or options dot yes. We could do that with an if statement, or we could do it like this. So what that means is it's going to start on the left-hand side and evaluate this. If they didn't pass in a second parameter, this is going to evaluate to false. So we'll continue reading through the or and try to access the yes property on text or options. Same thing with no. And with text, it's a little bit more it's just a little bit more difficult because we are expecting that parameter to exist. So we're going to say something like this: text or options dot text if that property exists. Otherwise, just text or options. And there you go. And that will give you both of these syntaxes just like that. The reason why this is working is because we're just evaluating that. If it doesn't exist, it evaluates to false, and it keeps reading through the or. The interesting thing that what you can do is using this syntax, you can actually do ands as well, and ands are great checks for whether something exists. So suppose I have a variable called, actually here's a good test. Here's a good thing that would happen. So most browsers nowadays have the object JSON, which has methods like JSON.stringify, which is going to go ahead and turn an object into a string. Well, okay. So, but some browsers do not, like Internet Explorer 7, for example. So what if how can I could write if statements all over the place, if JSON, blah, 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 blah. Or I could say JSON and JSON.stringify. And do that. So my object, right? Let's do, I'll do something crazy, document. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to say, assuming JSON exists, and if it evaluates to false, it'll stop evaluating there, and str will be equal undefined. But assuming JSON exists, do this. So Claudia, if you remember that if not null extension method we used to do, same dark. Pretty awesome stuff.
It is.
Yeah, and by the way, if you here's another thing you can do. JSON, and there are different libraries within that will allow you to emulate the JSON object. So then you can do load library to emulate JSON. There you go. And put that at your page, and there you go. So however you would load that library, usually using a JavaScript loader, but that would ensure that you have that variable available even in browsers like IE6. So cool stuff.
Nice.
Yep. I don't know if anyone wants this Scratch thing, but I'll put it on a Scratch pad.
That's cool. You know, last week I went through that code school, their jQuery first flight hands-on training. That was pretty cool. So you're showing this stuff. It doesn't look completely foreign to me now. Yeah, I'm starting to get more used to it, even though I'm not still doing anything with it because I didn't get there. I'm doing more like middle tier stuff and just, you know, specking out things and writing the the functional part of the site, but I think in, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks from now, I'm going to start doing more jQuery and stuff, and this is all going to come in handy.
Yeah. I mean, jQuery is amazingly powerful. I actually have to run right now, but I would totally want to talk about some point about JavaScript events. But the jQuery event system is really, really neat. You can do some really cool things with it. Where the heck is our messages? Okay, I'm going to give you control. I'm going to paste this link into the shared notes.
Sounds good, man.
All right. There you go.
Cool.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot. I've got to run.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, bye. All right, let's see. Let me bring back my browser here, and I guess continue on from where I was before my audio dropped. Just get my browser here. Oh, share. Here we go. Alright, I should be coming up anytime now. Alright, so what I was talking about related to this blog post, so what motivated me about that post was because one of the comments on that, let's go back up here, that introduction to the series that I did for Ruby Source, one of the guys, I mean, the very first comment that I got there was, no thanks, ASP.NET MVC does everything I need, going to Rails would be a step down. All right, okay, whatever, right? Because, I mean, I did ask the guy, okay, so tell me exactly how that could be a step down, right? And then one of the guys here also responded, how is it a step down? Could you elaborate? I fail to see learning something as a step down. And that was really my point. I mean, I'm not writing this series to just say, hey, everybody, you should just leave .NET and go to Ruby on Rails. That would be stupid. I would never say anything like that, right? My main point of these series is to say, okay, I'm doing this transition because I want to do it, right? And here are the things that I'm really liking about it. Here are the things that I'm really having a hard time with it. And, you know, it's just out there for whoever wants to either try it out or at least try to learn some of those concepts and then use those concepts in their .NET primary job. That's fine, right? And then, so that's what motivated me into writing this blog post this morning. I was actually planning on something like that, but just taking it from the idea of learning in spiral, right, where you're always revisiting some of the things that you knew before, except that you're seeing it from a higher level after all the experience you've learned, both by using that one thing that you're using, plus the other stuff that you started using or getting exposed to along the way. So I go through like, you know, how I started with DBase 3, like creating databases and then writing macros in Lotus 1, 2, 3. And then from there I went to Clipper, which was similar, so it was not a huge transition. And then from there to FoxPro, which again, it was the same kind of language, databases. I got that all taken care of. And then from there to Visual FoxPro, which was also a smooth transition because even though that environment did have object-oriented features, you could also write an entire application using your procedural stuff. So that way I transitioned very well into Visual FoxPro and also learned like the SQL language, SQL. And then from there, I went into object-oriented programming, which was like this huge thing, right? Because coming from several years of procedural programming and then getting into OP, well, you know, I could reuse some of my knowledge regarding, well, I know what an if block is, right? I know what loops are and variables are, but I didn't know anything about classes, methods, or anything like that. So eventually I learned those, right? So I was not really learning object-oriented practiced per se. I wouldn't know what like open-close principle was, but I knew how to create some classes, some methods, so it's all like piling up as far as the things I know. And then I looked into like Visual Basic 3. It was relatively easy to learn because I could identify the main programming constructs, the classes, the methods, that's all good. And just fast forwarding through the stuff, eventually I got to C#, which was very different from what I knew before, because up to that point, I had only used X-base languages like FoxPro, Clipper, DBase, and those. And then I get into C#. I had never done C, C++, or anything like that, right? I had done a little bit of JavaScript, but it's not the same thing. So that was a huge transition for me, as well as strong typing, because all these other languages didn't have strong typing. It didn't have like case sensitivity, so the code could be as sloppy as the programmer, right? But then I guess eventually, because I knew object-oriented programming, by that time I knew it pretty well, and my design patterns and stuff, learning C# was mostly learning the syntax, at least to get into it. So I've reused all of this knowledge that I had before into learning this new environment. So it was not such a big deal to get into it. But at the same time, I didn't know interfaces and I didn't know delegates. Because interfaces, that was not a concept in FoxPro, and delegates, there was nothing like that. And since I had not done any C-like language, I didn't know, function pointers didn't mean anything to me, right? So I couldn't say, when people would say, well, delegate is just an object-oriented function pointer. I'm like, what the hell does that mean, right? But eventually I got over that bump, right? I learned that well, and then C# starts to get these like functional features. And I'm like, well, I've never seen a functional language in my life. I don't know what the heck that means. So when LINQ came out, the only way I could relate to it was not from a functional perspective, but it was because it looked like SQL, but in C#. So it looked like FoxPro stuff that I was doing 15 years ago, but in C#. So in that sense, it was a smooth transition there. But at the same time, I didn't know, all these, okay, what's this lambda thing? Because when I started seeing LINQ, instead of using the query comprehension, I started using, I've seen people using just calling, chaining method calls. I'm like, what are these lambda things, weird things? And then some literature would talk about the math behind it. And right now I'm still at a loss as far as, the mathematical aspects of a lambda. I don't understand, and I'm not sure I care to understand. I'm not that geeky, because the way I see it, well, somehow I managed to understand it relatively well, where I can make use of these functional aspects of C#. I can make good use of it, even though I don't understand the academic part behind it, right? But anyways, once I figured that out a little better, the way generics work and all, so that was cool. And then I got into the dynamic features of C#, which was interesting, right? Because it was going back to the dynamic nature of FoxPro, because FoxPro is a dynamic language. I also had metaprogramming in there, so I could create dynamic behavior in my programs, right? And then after a couple of years of doing C# where everything was strong typed and blah, 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 well, now I'm back to doing dynamic programming, creating objects dynamically and giving a hash to that object, and the hash would contain messages that the object can receive. Those messages could be properties, they could be methods, they could return different stuff based on the algorithms that I'm passing in. And several times, a couple of months ago or several months ago, I shared here the idea of like encapsulating or replacing a switch statement with a dictionary of lambdas or of delegates. And so I just took that this next step into using C# where I would give a hash with these delegates to an object and have the object grow dynamically based on runtime things happening. So when I got into Ruby, well, that part was easy, right? Because I was already doing some dynamic stuff in C#. I knew some metaprogramming back from the FoxPro days, right? I knew object-oriented programming, all that stuff. So getting into Ruby is like, oh, okay, cool. I think I can get the gist of it. Now I can start. I'm to that point where I can say, okay, all right, now let me learn exactly the Ruby way of doing it. Because right now I'm, like I put on my post, I speak Ruby with a C# accent, right? Because I still think from a C# standpoint, because it's what I've been doing for the last like 8 to 10 years, right? But, you know, one step at a time, I'm learning Ruby a little better. If I have to go back and do anything in C#, I'm going to have gathered this knowledge from doing metaprogramming and dynamic programming and all that in Ruby, and I can try to translate quite a bit of that knowledge into C#. And that's something that, for instance, Rob Connery has been doing a lot. If you see Rob Connery, he was working on the ASP.NET MVC team at Microsoft. He left to work mostly with Ruby. Now he's back into the .NET world by creating some things for .NET that essentially reuses some of the concepts and design ideas and implementation ideas that he's learned in Rails. So it's just going back to the idea that even if today you have no reason whatsoever to use something, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be useful to learn a little bit about it. Like one thing that I mentioned to one of those guys that commented on that post was that when I first started learning classic ASP, I was working at this company where I was doing FoxPro, right? And then classic ASP had just come out, and I had no intentions or ideas or possibilities to start using or doing web developments because the company didn't have any need for that. But because the compilation time that I had at the time would take, like, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to compile my projects, I printed out this 100-page tutorial on classic ASP, and every time I was compiling or building, I would read like 3 or 4 paragraphs from that tutorial. And then I was reading that. I didn't actually sit down to write any code. But then 6 months later, guess what I'm doing? I'm doing ASP development pretty much full-time, consuming components that I wrote in FoxPro. Right? So you never know the day of tomorrow. You never know what kind of opportunities, business opportunities, you're going to be getting down the road. So, you know, if you have a chance to learn, why not to? Right? It was the whole point of my post there. Let's see. Man, I've been talking for a while. You guys have any comments or, you know, anything you would like to insert in there or points you would like to bring up? And if you don't, I'll just keep talking. So it's your call.
I like your story.
Cool. Thanks. All right. Let's see. What else do I have here? Oh, there's a link that I've run into this morning from a tweet from Jimmy Bogart. It's a brighter CFS feature. So over the last couple of months, we've been talking about, well, there's CFS, there's Mercurial, there's Git, and yada, yada, yada. So he saw this post by a PM, a project manager for CFS, right, where one of the things that he mentions is that distributed version control system is something that's in their future, right, but it's not, they're not there yet. Right, so apparently they are changing some things around to enable that scenario, but it's, I mean, based on that quote, it doesn't look like it's something that, you know, we would be getting anytime soon. But like Jimmy points out, at least it's good to know that they do know about those things. They do know that people are valuing that kind of system, and that it's important to them. So maybe, in a couple of years from now, we can also get that in TFS. See, another thing that I've watched recently, actually last week I was watching this video. It's a presentation from Martin Fowler that actually happened 2 years ago, and at the time, ThoughtWorks, the company that he works for, had been using Ruby for 3 years, and then in this talk, he talks about, what their experiences are or were at the time with Ruby, right? How many projects, and he mentioned that they've worked on like 40 plus Ruby projects from all sizes, some that would range from like just a couple of months to like 2 years, 3-year type of projects. And then he explains the kind of things that people complain about, the kind of problems they had, how they've approached certain problems such as, oh, what about tooling for working with Ruby? I need my IDE and blah, blah, blah. And then he explains that talking with the developers from the teams that worked there, they say, and it's also the perception that I've been getting, which is, Ruby is so clean, it's such a small, simple language, that the fact that you don't need a huge IDE to work with it, it doesn't matter, right? I've mentioned that I've been using RubyMine to do my Ruby development, but I've been looking into just doing like JB and using Vim to do the code editing part, the code editing and navigation. For certain things, if I'm doing like refactorings and stuff like that, I do like having my IDE. But for other things, maybe something very lightweight and fast to just navigate through my code and do some quick edits, that would do just fine. It's a lot better than a huge pile of software that takes forever to connect to servers and to do whatever the heck it's doing and freezing, when all I want to do is to navigate text and edit text, right? So he talks about that, and also he interviews some of his developers, and they talk about these things. So it's a nice watch. Like I said, I've watched it last week. I wasn't aware of this video before. It was interesting seeing some of the things that they mentioned, like difficulties that they had at the time, are some of the difficulties that I've been going through, but it's just part of the process. And that's good, and the bottom line is they are very happy. Overall, they are very happy with the projects. They say that it was like a good thing to have created or built those projects in Ruby. They say that there were some cases where project managers said, well, we didn't really gain anything with Ruby in those particular projects. It's not that it was worst, it's just that it gave us exactly what we had if we had used whatever other platform like Java or .NET, right? So it was not worse, it's just we didn't gain anything from it, so it was just like learning a new paradigm and blah, blah, blah. But other than a few of those, they said that the vast majority was people just enjoying it because it's small language, powerful language, simple to work with. So that was interesting. And like I was mentioning while when George was done talking about JavaScript, also last week I went over this jQuery Air First Flight training course from Code School. Pretty cool. This is the same. These are the same guys that did the Ruby, Rails for Zombies that I've mentioned several months ago, and I like their style. The idea that they have a video, like for the jQuery one, for instance, it's 5 levels. On each level, it starts with a video that's like a 12 to 15 minute long video, right? They explain some core concepts that you need to know. And then they go into this hands-on thing, which is an in-browser experience where they give you some sort of challenge, and then you have some source code that you have to go in there and either type out yourself or change the code to do whatever the task is asking you to do, and then you hit a button. It's going to evaluate your code and tell you whether you got it right or wrong, and then you move on to the next level. So it's a pretty nice, quick way. I think, within, I don't know, like 2 hours you can go through the entire thing. I like the hands-on and, experience on it. I just haven't had time to grab a book on jQuery or do a lot with it. So having something small like this where I can concentrate at small things at a time, that has been helpful. So that's something I recommend if you're looking into getting started on jQuery, which is like my case. And what else? Let's see, that's it, what I had on my list for this brown bag. Is there anything in specific you guys would like to talk about?
Hey, Claudio.
Hey, what's up, man?
What's up? Maybe next week we could talk about, because I'm late to the game, but maybe I have some WPF questions I'm trying to overcome, but
okay.
It would probably take longer than the time we have now, so maybe we can do that next week. I don't know if you're still doing WPF.
So it's been months since I've done anything with WPF, but
yeah.
I did do WPF for like 3 years before switching over. So I don't know, depending on what question you have, I may know something. And if we have JB on the call, he hasn't been doing WPF either for like about a year, but he knows a lot.
Yeah.
WPF. So maybe, putting all of us together, we might be able to help you out.
Okay.
Is it anything specific to something like visual stuff or view models?
Mainly it's like, it seems every place you go to look for a model view model examples, they're very simplistic and they're all different. No one seems to have the same implementation from what I've seen. I mean, yours, a lot of what I'm doing is based off your example from the Code Magazine article.
Okay.
And I got started with that, but when you start getting really complex applications, I just have questions, like I don't know where to go,
Right.
On a simple dialogue that all the examples have, like a cancel button or show a combo box or something. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just I'm late to the game. I'm also doing I'm learning Rails at home. I know I got started with you guys when JB was doing the live sessions on Friday night, but I'm kind of trying to catch up with Rails at home. I don't really have a reason to learn it other than just to learn it, but
right. Yeah, and like I mentioned, I wish I had started learning it maybe like around a year ago or so, when I was considering look into ASP.NET MVC, but I guess it's just part of the game. At least at the time, I was already doing a lot of like dynamic programming with C#. So again, I spent like the last 2 years doing lots of stuff with C# dynamics, and so when I got into Ruby, it's like, oh, I know exactly what's happening here because of all this dynamic stuff. So it was one less thing that I had to learn, which was good.
Yeah. Yeah, the only problem I've seen with it is it has a really steep learning curve if you're not familiar with anything dynamic, and the biggest learning curve, I think, is really just setting up your environment and setting up Git and then setting up Heroku, and it's like you have all these Git commands that you follow, you don't really understand what they're doing, so then you gotta go and learn Git. And I think I spent a couple of days I got a really good book, I think it's called Ruby on Rails 3 tutorial, and that's what I got started with, but it's a steep learning curve, but once you get to start writing the pages and everything, then it's not as bad, but I think I spent a couple of days overcoming errors in Git or whatever.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And actually, when I got started on Rails, I tried to avoid Git for a little while because I was using Mercurial, which is similar to Git, but still different. And I said, you know what? Let me just focus on Rails. I'll only do Rails, and then later I'll figure the Git stuff. Right, so I spent like most of my first couple of weeks just doing Rails. I totally forgot about repository or anything like that. I'm like, let me just get the framework and some of the language going, and then I'll get into Git. And then later I did start learning some Git and stuff, and spent, I don't know, I think like 2 months using Git, and then I just went back to Mercurial. I just like it better. I don't know, I got more used to it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Heroku, I am using Git, right? So I really have two repositories. I have my Mercurial one, which is my real source control system. But when I need to deploy it to Heroku, I just check it against my Git repository, and then I push it up to Heroku. But setting up Heroku, that's been the easy part for me, man, because just following the tutorial that they have on the Heroku site.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with really Heroku. I think the biggest problem was Git, and I have no idea about what all the branching and merging and all that stuff means, because the source control here we use doesn't really use that. So it was a steep learning curve, and it was kind of frustrating, but that was the only frustrating thing I found about it.
Right.
And then there's like 500 IDEs that you can use, and no one seems to have an exact answer on what IDE. So I just started using Komodo Edit because, I don't know, it was kind of easy to, it's really just an editor instead of like an IDE, but I promised myself I guess I'll buy a copy of RubyMine when I'm serious enough. But
well, and actually I remember when JB first started on Rails and started sharing some stuff with us here on the Brown Bag, he was using Komodo as well.
Right.
And that was my thing too. When I started like the first month in Rails, I kid you not, I was using Notepad 2 as my code editor, because I really wanted to get my hands dirty with Ruby and just get to the code. I mean, I can do like file navigation through the file system, no problem, so I would just open up the file, type the code, and get it going. And I did that for a month until I said, okay, now that I think I'm getting a hold of the the language and the framework and stuff, all right, let me see what's available as far as IDEs are concerned, so I can get some of my shortcuts back, like refactoring and class navigation and find usages kind of stuff. And that's when I got into RubyMine, and I've been enjoying it. But I'm still not entirely sold on it or settled on it. I'm using it, but like I said, I started doing Vim for certain things. Depending on what I'm trying to do, I've started to just pop open Vim, and of course, on that one, there's a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, okay, I'm committing to 10 minutes a day. I will do, Vim. I will open the files in Vim. I will learn the shortcuts to navigate around and to do, edits. But then I'm out of there. Otherwise, I'm not going to get anything done.
Yeah, I think the best advice for someone starting Rails is to not use one of these IDEs like Vim or RubyMine, because then you have a learning curve. You have to learn the IDE as well, and it's frustrating. It's just better to use it in like a Komodo editor or some kind of editor, and once you're comfortable with like what Rails is and what Ruby is, and then you can figure out what IDE you want to use. But
sounds good. Yeah, that's kind of the same path I've been through. Cool. All right, yeah, so just put together your thoughts on the thing you need help with in WPF, and, let's try to tackle it next week then.
okay, sounds good.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Not a problem. All right, so it's 1 o'clock, I guess. Most of us have to go back to that thing we call work, including myself. So thanks a lot, guys, for sticking around and supporting us, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye, everybody.